What's cracking, guys? Bruce Matson from Metric Scout Fantasy Football, and today I'm going to cover the Ohio State-Michigan game. Michigan came up on top 42-27, and this really resets things. Ohio State's not going to be in the playoff. Michigan's going to get that opportunity to sneak in there. They got to win that Big Ten championship game, but really, I just want to cover this from a Devy fantasy football perspective. I did this last year when I went over big games, bowl games, and whatnot, and just went down the box score and just ripped off the top of my head how I looked at these players going forward in a dynasty fantasy football perspective, their long-term player value, and everything else. So this may be a different perspective than what many people are used to, because I'm just going to look at their long-term player value as in terms of their ability to go into the NFL. First things first, let's talk about Michigan. And Hassan Haskins had a big day, 5 touchdowns, 169 yards. The offensive line was stout, pushing OSU around them. Linebackers were getting ate up all day long. And Hassan Haskins, though, he'll be in this year's draft, the 2022 NFL draft, and he's a big boy, 6'1", 220 pounds. He's a senior. It's over 1,000 rushing yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, 4.9 yards per carry. And honestly, he's not a top-tier back. He's not a top-tier talent, but with that size, with over 1,000 yards rushing and having a big performance in this game today, this is the game you want to have that performance in. You don't want to have it in those middle-tier games like against Illinois or something like that. Against Ohio State national stage, that was the perfect time to do so. There's a good chance he gets drafted. Is it going to be good draft capital? Probably not. But can he work his way on a roster, get some time? Possibly. He's a former 3-star guy, wasn't heavily recruited. He was really an underdog story for him to work his way up the depth chart and get this 1,000-yard season, over 2,000 rushing yards on his career. So there's a chance that he gets okay draft capital. I'm thinking mid-rounds or later, maybe a late-round guy, but maybe somebody that can get some run for a little bit over the course of his NFL career. Nothing astounding to where Dynasty or Devy fantasy football managers are want to chomp at the bit to get him. Blake Corum, 6 carries, 87 yards, and we've noticed him off and on throughout the season. He's rushed for 778 yards and 10 touchdowns this year. He's 5'8", 200 pounds. He does have some speed, and it's going to be interesting to see how his career continues to blossom in this Wolverines offense. Right now, again, he's not a top-tier Devy option. He's not in those top backs in the 2023 NFL draft class, but he does do some nice things. And if he continues to build upon this resume, he could become a decent back. Right now, he's not really draftable in most Devy leagues. So he's just a guy or just a name just to have on the radar just in case he explodes next year. But he has done some decent stuff this year. Just another guy to keep an eye on. The guy I'm monitoring him hard, and I'm sure a lot of other Devy aficionados have been as well. That's Donovan Edwards, 5-star running back prospect. He's made some plays this year. He made one today. He had that little one-handed catch. Looked really nice. He's a big-time athlete. I look for him to explode next year. I look for him to get some touches. I look for him to take over this backfield sooner than later. I really wish he would have got more opportunities this year, because I think he's a damn good running back. I think he's a guy that can really take it up to the next level. I think this Michigan team starting to look good now. If Donovan Edwards hits like he's looking like he's getting ready to, then he could be a major problem for a lot of teams. I look for him to take a step forward next year. I look for him to be that cheap option into this offseason that Devy gamers might be able to acquire. I don't know now. I think that window's kind of slamming shut because he's shown just a little bit for him to increase in price. But I like Donovan Edwards, the freshman running back here from Michigan, and I liked him going into this year as well. If you check the highlight tape that I went over this summer on him, you could tell he was a baller. Just go back in the archives and watch that. But yeah, we went over his recruiting videos. For Michigan's wide receiver core, from a Devy fantasy football perspective, there really isn't much to go on here. There's just not much production. There hasn't been much upside. It's just not really part of Michigan's game. And Caden McNamara had a good season this year. Of course, it led to Michigan to 11-1 record, but from a Devy Dynasty Fantasy Football perspective, he's just a guy that we're not interested in. J.J. McCarthy, 5-star prospect, freshman, 6'3", 197 pounds, is a prospect that could blossom going forward. Is it likely? I don't know. But there is some talent there that we at least want to acknowledge. Ohio State is loaded with Devy and Dynasty prospects. First off, let's talk about C.J. Stroud. Today, passed for 394 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had a decent game today. It wasn't his best performance, and it wasn't his worst performance. It was just good, I would say. It wasn't great. It was good. He made some plays happen. He made some pretty throws too. It just wasn't his best, but still 394 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaged 8 yards per attempt, and he can sling the rock. He is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and he is going to be considered one of the top quarterbacks for the 2023 NFL draft class. I guarantee you that. And as long as he doesn't fall off a cliff next year, he's just going to continue to build up that draft stock. Easy first-round projection as of right now. At running back, TreVeyon Henderson has been one of the best players in the country, and is a freshman, rushed for 74 yards and 1 touchdown. Also caught 5 balls, 54 yards and a touchdown, 2 touchdowns on the day. Good performance, even though Michigan's defense was just straight swarming him. He was still able to be productive. The defense just played well in this game. They had good penetration. They were blowing up the offensive line, and it was just hard for the Buckeyes to keep things rolling. TreVeyon Henderson still was able to be productive. We just didn't get those blow-up plays where he was explosive running through the defense for a splash play to help move the chains, but it's still 74 yards and 54 yards on the receiving end isn't anything to shake a stick at. It's still a good game there. He is one of the best running backs in the country, top freshman in the country, and he is a creme de la creme Devy prospect, and no one's going to debate you on that one. The wide receivers for Ohio State, we all know about them. Jackson Smith-Njigba's had a tremendous season. He had a great game today, had that 1 catch where I don't even know how he did it, but he kind of wrapped his arms around the defender and was able to make the grab, but had 127 yards off 11 catches and was very productive. Garrett Wilson, who will be in this year's draft, probably easy first-round pick, maybe even the top wide receiver selected, 10 receptions, 119 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown grab was an amazing play where he climbed a ladder and brought it home. Chris Olave, 7 catches, 88 yards. And Olave was a little bit slow in this game. He had 3 catches for 39 yards, 59 yards or something like that. Going deep into the game, fourth quarter, and then he really churned out some production later on. Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, those guys were just used heavily, early and often. I just wish they were able to get a few more splash plays in this game, but overall, good production. Olave is going to be drafted with decent draft capital this year. He did not go out in last year's draft and came back to play this season, so there's some speculation to why to that, but honestly, throughout this year, he has proved he is one of the best wide receivers in the nation. Is he top 5 in this class at the wide receiver spot? That's highly debatable. I don't know about that. I don't think I would have him in my top 5. I'd have to go over that with you guys here in the next few weeks, but I kind of doubt it. Garrett Wilson, though, he's battling for the wide receiver 1 spot with Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks is nasty, but Garrett Wilson's a technician who can make big plays. Jackson Smith-Njigba will be out in next year's draft in 2023, and he will be battling Kayshon Boutte for the top spot. I think Kayshon Boutte should continue to be the wide receiver 1 in that draft, even though he's been injured, just because he's more explosive, more dynamic. Jackson Smith-Njigba is nothing to shake a stick at either, because he can make tough catches. He's a sound route runner. We didn't get much from the tight ends in this game from a fantasy perspective, but all in all, after watching this game, Michigan just was the better team today. They pushed around Ohio State on both sides of the ball. They were able to run the ball. Hassan Haskins played his guts out. The offensive line for Michigan was nasty. The Buckeyes defense just didn't get it done. The linebackers were trash. The offense sputtered at times. Bad play calling hurt them as well. So it wasn't just on the players, but they did have some drops in this game, and everything just wasn't 100% fine-tuned. It looked like they were going to have their moments, but they just weren't as consistent as they were in prior weeks. It wasn't like the Michigan State game last week where they were just rolling early and unstoppable. This game, they started off a little slow. They picked it up at times, but they weren't able to keep it going. And Michigan eventually, who started out really good in this game, was able to keep the lead, keep the game going, and just really close it out with a big win, 42-27. But that's all I got on this game. A lot of good Devy prospects in this contest. Some young guys to keep an eye out going forward. But I want to thank you for watching the show, sticking with me. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. Every subscription matters. Fuels me to keep putting out this content. Fuels me to keep helping you guys out with your fantasy teams. Again, I want to thank you, and I'll catch you next time.